Get ready!
Disgaea Hour of Darkness is a misleadingly titled game developed by Nipponichi Software for the PS2. There's a certain category of games I like to call niche games, titles made specifically to serve one small but dedicated audience without much competition. NIS is one of the kings of this type of game since they're the only ones making old-school isometric turn-based strategy RPGs. Specific, I know, but they've had the market locked down since 2001 with the release of La Pucelle Tactics on the PS2, and then like 5 other strategy RPGs for the console, the most popular of which was Disgaea, released in 2003 and the beginning of a cult hit franchise that continues to this day with sequels, spin-offs, adaptations, and ports on all kinds of systems. It's so popular the company's mascot is now the deformed peg-legged exploding demon penguin iconic to the Disgaea franchise. And that's real iconic, not Ubisoft iconic. They're called Prinnies. Dude. Even though I'm not the most experienced when it comes to games like Vandal Hearts or Final Fantasy Tactics, Disgaea is a series I find very interesting due to its subversion of many tropes usually found in video games, along with dedication to traditional gameplay. So, with a decade and a half being celebrated with the release of Disgaea 1 complete and Disgaea 6 on the way, it seems like a good time to take a look at the game that started it all, as in the very first version of the game that started it all. Disclaimer, I used the cheat code halfway through Chapter 5 for reasons I'll explain later. So with that out of the way, here are my overview, review, tips, tricks, and general thoughts on the game. Let's get started, shall we? In the Netherworld, which is some kind of interdimensional anime hell where almost everyone looks like they have anorexia, hundreds of thousands of demons live under the rule of the all-powerful demon lord King Krichevskoy. Unfortunately, he chokes on a pretzel and dies, leaving the throne open for anyone who wants it, because that's just how things work down here. This turns the Netherworld into a crazy land full of crazies wanting the crazy power being Overlord would give them. 2 years later, his son, Prince Laharl, wakes up just before his vassal Etna shoots him in the face. And before anyone comments on her outfit, she is a 1,470-year-old succubus and doesn't actually exist, so shush. Once Laharl learns the state the Netherworld is in, he decides to show everyone who's boss and take his rightful place on the throne by gathering an army and crushing anyone who gets in his way. Along the way, he shifts from a selfish, egotistical, angry, arrogant anti-hero to a slightly less selfish, egotistical, angry, arrogant, normal-ish hero thanks to the good old power of friendship. Of course. This process is mostly brought about thanks to a ditzy angel trainee named Flan sent from, I guess this game's version of heaven to assassinate Laharl. Why they sent one of the ditziest beings in existence, I have no idea, but she just forgets and decides to stick around to help Laharl with the power of love. This does give our skinny blue-haired hero a bit of trouble since positivity actually physically hurts him because cheesy anime reasons that actually contribute to a pretty neat character arc. Even that won't stop him from taking over the Netherworld no matter how many stupid enemies get in his way through the 14 chapters telling his story. Like a recurring, self-proclaimed rival, Laharl renames Mid-Boss, or a self-absorbed and delusional Defender of Earth, joined by his robot and a hot girl wearing a bikini. If you can't already tell, this game's story has a heavy emphasis on humor, to the point where a zombie is to be feared for possessing a horse wiener. Not to mention the most iconic monsters in this game are, again, deformed demon penguins called Prinnies that explode when you throw them, dude. Surprisingly, this actually helps make the more dramatic character arcs more effective. Remember, contrast is important. But who cares about that, dude? You're a kid with giant antenna hair taking over anime hell with the help of a Lolita succubus, a hippie angel, and all sorts of warriors bent on assisting you with total domination. As the saying goes, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And when in the Netherworld, kill everyone and take it over. Dude. Oh, sweet and holy chips and guacamole, we've got a lot to cover here. Disgaea is an old-school turn-based tactical role-playing game in the style of games like Final Fantasy Tactics, Vandal Hearts, Ogre Battle, and Eternalize. Who cares about that game? Meaning you have a handful of main characters unlocked through the story, and you build an army of various classes to take on a bunch of missions and progress the story. You've got 2 main types of classes, human and monsters. Human classes consist of normal ones like warriors, mages, brawlers, thieves, ninjas, clerics, and other stuff. Then you have the types unique to this series, like magic-wielding rune knights, terrain-altering striders, and magical arching, if that's even a word, angels, and crazy powerful demons called Mages that basically render every other class completely obsolete. As for monsters, you have Prinnies, and a bunch of others I didn't use because there are a lot of them, and I didn't have time to use them for this video. You get a pretty great variety of classes that each have different abilities. or at least some of them do. Every class has affinities for certain stats along with weapons, which is how they gain new skills. You give them a weapon and they keep using said weapon until they find bigger and flashier ways to use them, and it can get pretty absurd. Mages have classes for Ice, Fire, and Wind, the 3 elemental types of this series, and you can unlock Star Mages later on, which ignore that. Yep. Unlocking. You start out with a handful of different classes, but then have the chance to make more by having a unit of a certain class reach a certain level, or any character gaining enough weapon proficiency. Then you've got a brand new type of unit to make into a level 1 character and repeatedly lose them in battle because you want to catch them up with the ones you already have. Yay! Luckily, monsters are a lot simpler. Just kill one and you can make that monster for your own army. As if that wasn't enough, each class has 5 or 6 tiers, meaning there are stronger versions of units you already have and keep building up. It's a lot. So once you've gotten down to business, you can defeat the Huns. I mean demons. The battle system is really the bulk of the content in Disgaea, and it's definitely old school. Every chapter has a handful of battles, which consist of isometric battlefields, where your job is to kill everything that lives and some things that don't, because those are also here. You can call up to 10 units out of a portal, position them, select an attack if possible, and execute once you've gotten everything lined up. Similar to the original Final Fantasy, all your attacks have to be planned out ahead of time in sequence. If you have 2 characters declare an attack a single target, and the first one kills it, the second one can't attack, meaning you basically wasted their time. This counts for spells too, along with special attacks. You can't declare them without a target, but you have to plan ahead to make sure that target doesn't move. Not to mention you have to take things into account like character stats, elemental weaknesses, and chances to activate team attacks. If you have some super crazy space-age computer brain required to think through all of that, you can make chains to deal more damage and earn more experience for characters. Another thing you need to keep track of is something pretty unique to Disgaea, the Geo System. All the flashing panels aren't graphical glitches, they're distinguishing panels that use geo effects. Most stages have geo crystals, which affect every panel of a certain color. For example, if a crystal with the effect negative 50% attack is on a panel glowing blue, any unit standing on a blue panel has their attack reduced. It's really hard to keep track of, but if you can do it, you've probably spent too much time playing these kinds of games. You should try your best to take advantage of them though, since some may give you a massive boost in experience. Trust me, you'll need it. So that's your own characters, the battlefield, their weapons, elemental stuffs, and this creepy angel guy knows what else you need to juggle when going into battle. In other words, you gotta think ahead. You gotta weigh the pros and cons. You gotta be strategic. You gotta be what people who like this kind of game like to be when they play these kinds of games. Above all else, you gotta be patient, because this game is grindier than an upscale coffee shop stroke nightclub. Every new member of your army starts out at level 1, and the enemies go up by about 2 or 3 levels with each battle. Considering you'll want to make as many different classes as possible, you'll need to spend quite a bit of time doing the same thing over and 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 over again. Then you'll do it a few more times just to be sure, and one more time for good measure. It's not just grinding for XP either, you'll also be needing money and mana, which I'll get to in a bit. Fortunately, there's a solution. Kind of. All you have to do is walk up to this one girl in the castle and give her an item. Then you can access the item world, which is basically a randomly generated endless dungeon full of increasingly hard enemies. Every floor not only gives you grinding fodder, but each one you clear increases the level of the item, so it becomes stronger. Be prepared before going in though, since you only have the option to leave every 10 levels without a special item. You don't mess around in this game. You think something like Final Fantasy is grind heavy? That's nothing compared to Disgaea. Oh sure, you might think you're some kind of big shot getting a character to level 99 in any other game, but how about 9,999? Dragon Ball Z reference. That's not just with Laharl either, that's for every character you make. On the bright side, if you spend your whole life getting characters that strong, you can do crazy things like this. That about covers the basics of combat, so all that's left is the Dark Assembly. This is where you can change certain aspects of the game itself, at least when they vote for your side, which almost never happens. Oh come on, I'm the Overlord! Since when is anime hell a parliament? This is where mana comes into play. You pay it to try getting a motion approved and not having it approved because everyone hates you and you don't have the right items you can bribe them with. This can range from stronger enemies, new items in the store, or even unlocking entirely new sections of the game, which I didn't do because I didn't have enough time. In order to even bring them up in assembly, a character goes through a promotion exam, which are solo battles against enemies of increasing strength. This goes up to rank 11, although that's not really necessary. The enemies at that test are at least level 250, but you only need to have a few around the level mid-80s to beat the game, so why would you go through with that? Cause it's Disgaea, and you don't play Disgaea. you make a commitment. I can't help but feel I played a great game at the wrong time. I enjoy the mechanics and story, and I even enjoy playing Disgaea 4 on my Vita, but having to play it in time to make this video really discouraged me from enjoying it. This seems like the kind of series I'd play over a long period of my own time, so having to crunch it down into about a month didn't really work out for me. That's why I used a cheat code to max everyone out. I just couldn't do enough grinding to get through the game and make this video on time. After about 20 hours, I only made it to level 5-2, which wasn't much considering there are 14 chapters for the main story alone. Luckily, I kept a separate save file when I entered the code, so now I've got all the time I need to beat it for real. This game is ridiculously dense with content, as in you could spend days and days doing nothing but playing it and still not experience everything it has to offer. In fact, even after getting through most of the main story, I've barely scratched the surface on what this game has to see. Sure, it's mostly the same core gameplay, but I'm pretty sure anyone who's a fan of this style of game would love it. And I am, so there you go. If I have any problems with it, they're really just with the presentation. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a graphics snob, but I can understand why it received criticism at its release for its subpar visuals. This is a 2003 PS2 game, and it looks like it could run on the PS1 without much issue. Not a problem for me, but it just makes this particular version hard to recommend to people who might be interested and aren't really digging the visuals. I guess that's why they ported it to the PSP, DS, PC, Switch, and PS4. They're probably gonna port it to more stuff later. So yeah, pick those up if you aren't digging these visuals, I totally understand. The big problem I have is the music. It's just not that interesting. Which is a problem, considering how many times you'll hear the same track. I recommend going to YouTube and putting on your own tunes, or watch the rest of my videos. Actually, go watch my friends instead, they've got loads more, and it's all better than mine. Now for a few pieces of advice to make your playthrough a bit easier. Don't forget to utilize lift and throw. It extends how far you can move your characters and even enemies. Just remember not to throw the printies because they'll explode. Unless that's what you want, in which case, chuck them. With enemies, throwing them into each other just adds their levels together. This is important for level 5-3 where every panel but one makes you invincible. Throw all the enemies together in one clear panel and use characters at least level 17 to beat the new super enemy. It'll take a while, but whoever deals the final blow will go up by at least 10 levels. Don't make too many characters since it just increases the amount of time you need to spend grinding. When it says you can have 10 maximum characters, it really means you can have 10 deployed. If one dies, you can't replace them, so you need to be extra careful with that in mind. Make sure to take advantage of the item world since it lets you fight virtually endless battles and makes your items stronger. Then you don't have to spend money on stronger items and you can make your army stronger at the same time. Just make sure not to kill the item god before you beat the game or you'll get a bad ending. Finally, make sure to steal the horse wiener. Don't question it. That is Disgaea Hour of Darkness, an old school strategy game made simply to cater to fans of the genre. If you happen to like this kind of game, I can easily recommend the entire series. If you don't, this game and its sequels probably won't change your mind. I actually started collecting all the NIS PS2 SRPGs OMG LOL, and I've enjoyed what I've played of them so far. This is a series that knows what it is and has kept going for a decade and a half, showing the results of a small but dedicated fanbase. Thus ends my summary of Disgaea Hour of Darkness. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I hope you have a great day.